Well, if we've not met before, again, my name's Tim, and I'm the Director of Christian Emphasis here in Fort Wayne, Indiana. That's northern Indiana, north of Indianapolis, if you've never been to Indiana. And just a little bit of context of why I'm excited to be interviewing my friend, Peter. I'm the Director of Christian Emphasis, and I've been here for about 7 years. And in my first year, I got to go to Silver Bay in October for a chaplain's retreat that Janelle and others on this call have helped organize over the years. And Silver Bay was amazing, and the chaplain's retreat was amazing, and getting to meet other pastors, and but definitely fell in love with Silver Bay. And I got to go again the next year, and then it was kind of sporadic. And so when the time came for a new CEO to come to the Y, me and many others were praying for somebody, the Lord to bring somebody to Silver Bay that would help Silver Bay become even more awesome. Kind of the prayers you pray when your Y is praying for a new CEO. And so when I heard the announcement that it was Peter Doliber, I'd never heard of him. So I didn't know. I was like, well, okay, Lord, well, I hope Peter's awesome. And so January then of 2022, my friend Ryan Bean, who's on the call, says, Tim, I just got off the phone with Peter Doliber. He's amazing. I think you'd enjoy meeting him. Okay, Ryan, we'll set us up. And so Ryan set up a Zoom call for me and Peter to meet. And it was brotherly love at first sight, or at first call. I've really grown to be very affectionate of Peter and definitely look up to him. He's a lot older than me. And so he's one of those leaders that, you look up to just in his life story, his faith story, and his leadership story. I feel like I learn from him every time I'm around him. And so that's why I'm excited for you to meet him if you've not met Peter before. Just to learn from him and his life. So Peter, if you saw the announcement about him, he got to start in Georgia, and he's got some amazing stories there. So maybe he'll share one or two of those here. And then he led for a long time in Massachusetts at the Alliance level. And so he's still kind of getting his feet wet at Silver Bay. The water's cold. And so I know once in a while he probably puts his feet in the lake there, which is crystal clear, but he's still taking on both a big challenge and a big opportunity at Silver Bay. So we'll kind of cover all of those things in our talk. But Peter, welcome. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you, Tim. I'm very honored to be here, and I appreciate the opportunity very much. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, so maybe, people read a little bit about your bio, but when you think about how you got started at the Y, like how did that happen? How did you go from kind of what you were doing in life to kind of getting into the YMCA?
I was in Savannah, Georgia, and I had been doing a lot of work within the community and homeless work along with the local hospital, and had been doing some consulting. And I got contacted, it was actually kind of funny. I got a call one morning from a colleague who ran the First African Baptist Church, who was also the chair of the West Broad Street YMCA. And he said, you told me you'd help me. I need you to come to a meeting. And I said, when? He goes, now. And I was still in my PJs. And I said, where? He goes, West Broad Street Y. And I went, where is that? And he said, on May Street. I went, okay, I'm so confused. So I went to this YMCA that was between two public housing projects in Savannah, Georgia, on 4 acres of ground. The main building had been built in 1968 and had not been touched since 1988, and this was 2007. And there was a freestanding, it was a single-story cinder block building. The roof was falling in, bullet holes in the front desk, outdoor pool was full of green water and dead animals. There was a detached single-story cinder block childcare center that had a few kids in it, but it was in pretty rough shape. And we met in one of the rooms in the childcare center with a group from YUSA and from local folks who said, well, we're going to pull your charter and close this place unless you can figure it out. And they said, well, we think we have someone that will come in and work on it because he does turnarounds. And they asked me if I would do it. And I said, well, can you pay me? Because you clearly don't have any money. So how do we work this out? So the city and the county came together and came up with some money. And I ended up there for 6 years. And we did do a great turnaround of it. And it was probably one of the most enriching and humbling and eye-opening experience of my life, because as a white guy in an all-black historic Y that had been founded right after the Second World War, not in that building, but in the institution, was where Martin Luther King had first done his I Have a Dream speech. To be in that setting was incredible. And then to work with people that I did not know and to have to earn their trust and also learn how to trust them and overcome a lot of my instinctual prejudices was an incredibly amazing experience. And I will say, one of the things that for me was incredibly humbling was that we had a phrase we would use there. It's not 5 o'clock yet. Comes to the story, probably not worth retelling now, but basically, if God will supply when you need it. And so we need it at 5 o'clock. It's not 5 o'clock yet. And that was a catchphrase that the staff all used. And there were times, I remember one time very clearly early on when we weren't going to make payroll. And someone I had worked with when I ran for office in Savannah called me up and said, I'd like to come. I want to see you. I said, sure, come by the house. He said, no, I want to come to the office. I went, oh, no, you can't come here. This place is awful. But he came by and his wife's name was Flip. And he said, well, Flip and I put a little aside. We like to help places out now and again. And we see what you're doing for the kids here. And something, oh, how sweet. Bob's going to write me a check for like, $500. He said, so you're going to get some papers in the mail because we have to do this in a legal way. He said, so your first installment, $50,000, you should have that by next week. And I literally burst into tears because I thought, how is this going to happen? I mean, that meant payroll for like half a year at that point. So it was just unexpected, never asked him for anything. Over the period of time, we got close to $200,000 from he and his wife. And it was just that kind of stuff happened there all the time. It was incredibly humbling to be in that kind of a circumstance where clearly God was at work.
Well, I've heard a few of the stories, and we could spend all of our time just talking about all those stories. But we frame this time together as your life is just one of constant learning, and about leading. And so you were already a good leader when you went in there. Like, that was part of the draw and why they invited you into that space. But clearly, you faced leadership challenges that it wasn't like, oh yeah, I've done this before. I mean, there was a lot of new stuff, which I think all of us on this call feel like we're in some spaces where the leadership stuff required of us, just there wasn't a class for that. There wasn't like prior experience. We're in some new kinds of crises where it feels like that. And you said yes to walk into that kind of space. So could you identify like one or two ways that you felt like you really grew as a leader, or there was things that you really learned, or something that went real deep that maybe you hadn't really known in the same way before through your leadership there in Savannah?
Yeah, I think there were a couple of things. I mean, I've really tried in my life to walk into things not assuming I know at all, but thinking I know enough to get started, and then trying to bring people around me who know more than I do and lean into them to help me, and try to work with the people that are there who know more than I do to guide me. And I see leadership as more having the responsibility than having the authority. And that my responsibility is to set a vision and work with people. But I don't necessarily have the authority to tell everybody what to do. And I don't have the authority to necessarily change everything, but I have a responsibility to make sure that things happen the way they should. So sometimes that requires change. So I think it's a hard balance of figuring out who you can trust and who you can work with, and who do you listen to and who do you not. So like one of the people there, Deborah Enoch, had been there for 14 years before I got there. She technically was the interim CEO when I started. And, there was some friction. Understandably. I mean, who's this new guy, white guy coming in telling me what to do? And I've been here forever, and he's going to start changing things. And we formed a really good bond over time. And I think one time that just really epitomizes that, and I'm so grateful to her and for her and what she taught me. But there was a public school across the street from us, and it was all Black kids in the neighborhood. And the kids would come over to the Y every day and hang out and do stuff and eat and all those great things. And my office was situated where I could see kids coming in, and there was a white kid coming in with a bunch of Black kids one day. So I walked over and said, "Are you supposed to be here?" He goes, "Yeah." I said, "What are you doing?" He said, "I'm with my friends." I said, "Well, you're coming with me." He took him by the hand, walking back over to the school because he shouldn't be there. And I said, "This boy came to the Y," and the teacher went, "Yeah, that's where his mother signed him out to." I went, "Oh, I guess I'll bring him back." So I brought him back to the program room, and Deborah said, "Can I talk to you?" I said, "Sure." She goes, "No, like in your office." I said, "Sure. When you're done." She said, "No, like now." I said, "Yeah, of course." Open door, go to the office. And she said, "That is the most racist thing I've ever seen you or probably anyone else ever do." I said, "What did I do?" She goes, "You singled out one kid because they were white. And until you know every black kid coming in here and know whether they're supposed to be here or not, you can assume that some kid doesn't belong. Do you know what that did to him? You know what that did to the other kids that were here? That's a horrible thing to have done." And she walked out of the office. And I was just so thankful. I mean, I was humbled, felt horrible, um, felt convicted, uh, was mad at myself, but it was over time, not that moment. I became thankful that she felt safe enough to say that,
Mm,
and thankful that she loved me enough in my stupidity and my ignorance to tell me something that was so valuable for me to learn and made me a better person.
wow.
So to me, I think that's the importance of leadership, is to try to grow people to be in that position.
Mm, mm. Yeah, that's a very vulnerable story and a very humble story. So thank you, Peter, for sharing that. I think wow. So just to transition a bit, so you're in those experiences and then you go to Massachusetts. So a little bit different context, a little bit different role. What in your experience at Savannah do you feel helped prepare you for the kind of leadership work you were doing in Massachusetts?
It's a great question. I mean, because there was another large Y in that community that really wanted the property that we were on. And Savannah is where the racial tensions are under the ground. They're not talked about. They're just accepted. This is the black part of town. It's the white part of town. This is affluence. This is not. It's not really addressed. And to gain support for that Y required support from the white community. And in some cases, that took support away from the other white Y in town, which did not go over well.
Mm,
So learning how to get people from disparate points of view and backgrounds to work together, and learning what story you had to tell to whom and how you told it to solicit people to work together who would naturally not do that. That really became a good key for me with the Alliance, because the Alliance Massachusetts, at the time I went, had 32 independent Ys that were in the urban centers around Boston and the affluent centers in the suburbs to the rural areas in Western Massachusetts were very poor. And they did not get along. They did not work together. They did not work as a unit. And learning how to get them to have a commonality, to have a common cause and something they could believe in and see themselves in it and not feel threatened by someone else. That was a big part of that work in Massachusetts.
mm. I'm sensing a theme that when the most difficult job available is open, you seem drawn to it. I mean,
I don't know. I don't think I ask all the right questions before I
I
get
mean, when I think about just what you just described so easily, I'm like, oh my gosh, who would take that job? I mean, that's pretty remarkable. I know you're a man of faith, and so I know faith has been a big part of your what we would look back and say success in what is very difficult circumstances for what you've described. So how does your faith kind of help shape and empower how you lead and why you lead?
Well, it's interesting. I don't know that I give that a lot of conscious thought. Um, I can remember back to when I was about 2 or 3 years old, for a lot of different reasons, which we won't go into now, but I can't ever remember a time when God wasn't present. Just been always on a conversational level with God. Not that he talks back, because that's schizophrenia, but we have good conversations. Um, and I really don't remember any time in my life when that just wasn't a part of who I was and what I did. I think over time, I mean, my faith journey has been eclectic and unusual. As I got older, my desire was to please God. And then as I got older, I realized I already was pleasing. So now how do I serve him? and how do I listen to him for where I need to be? And if anything, trying to believe that where I am is where I'm supposed to be, and then figuring out how do I show up there?
Mm.
I will say in all of my life, in the moment, it never feels as comfortable as it does after it's over.
Yeah. Mm.
I'm a person that is riddled with self-doubt and really has a hard time with self-esteem
Mm.
and question myself. And 1,000 people can tell me you're really smart, and one person can go, "That's the dumbest thing ever." Yeah, I am just dumb. I am just an idiot, and it just sticks. And it's so when it keeps me humble, or to the degree that I can be. But I just see my entire life as one of trying to do the right thing to serve other people, and thereby serving God.
Yeah.
And it has taken me on a very odd path. I mean, at a Billy Graham rally when I was 15, I accepted Christ, and then I got involved in the Way International, which some of you may know of as a kind of a more extreme 70s and 80s Christian movement that was not accepted by mainstream. That fell apart in a horrible way. Had to rebuild my life with a year-old kid and a wife when I was in my 30s. And it's never been a straight line, but somehow things have always worked. And I've always felt very fortunate that it has. And I think I try to always self-examine, am I doing it? Am I putting the right priorities in order? Am I just doing it for myself? Or am I doing it for others? And then how am I showing up in a way that really is doing what I want to do when I tend to do more of what I don't want to do?
Yeah. Yeah, you got me thinking now. I'm supposed to be interviewing, not thinking, but now I'm thinking. Well, no, that's there's a lot of wisdom there, man. I appreciate that, Peter. Just in the few minutes we have left, we have people on this call from across the country. Some of them, this might be their first time on our call. Some of them have been on every single one for the last 2 years. What would be a word of encouragement to the leaders on this call who, care about seeing the YMCA being healthy, who, whatever faith background they have, like they want that to be a viable part of their work. And we just want to see the Y be successful. We just want to see the Y and be the best Y it can be. What would be a word of encouragement you would have to us, just from what some of us on this call, you've been in the Y a long time. What would be a word of encouragement to us?
I guess I would encourage you to think more about what you do and less about your dogma.
Mm.
It's not as much about whether someone's right or wrong. It's more about what do you do and how do you show up, and encourage you that God doesn't promise easy. He just promises he's always going to be there and that there'll always be a solution. And to trust that you're in the right place, you're called to where you should be, and when you shouldn't be there, that'll be evident. And sorry, that's Connor. and to believe that you make a difference in what you do. And if there's no one else where you are that understands or represents Christianity or how your faith shows up, you do. And know that may be all that's necessary.
Wow. I'm taking notes, so that was really good. No, kind of left me speechless. That was really good. I guess the last word then is, what's next for the Y? Like, what do you want to see happen next in the Y? From your vantage point at Silver Bay, what would be a hope or an aspiration for the YMCA movement?
That we can hold to where we came from, acknowledge the things that aren't great about it, but move forward as one movement. Recognizing the diversity of that movement. It doesn't have to be a singular thing, but we can move together with force. In the past, the Y as a movement has shaped history, has changed how we think and what we do, and has impacted millions of lives in a long-lasting way that has only happened by the singularity of purpose.
Mm.
And I would like to see us have those commonalities emphasized rather than our differences, and recognize the power we have as a collective force.
Mm. Love it. I want to give you a minute to brag about Silver Bay. Why should we all come? Why should we all come and stay at the Silver Bay YMCA?
Well, it's that thin slice between earth and heaven.
I think that's what Melissa said about Blue Ridge. So what is it?
Well,
about
there
your
could be
two
more
places?
than one,
Okay.
but I mean, this ground is sacred. I don't know of any person that has come here for whatever purpose and has not walked away from here changed and wanting to come back.
Hmm.
There is something very special about here. It's the place, it's the people, it's the lake, it's the mountain, it's the streams, but there's just something very sacred about these grounds, and everyone is welcome. And I'd love to host you here and have you come, as would Garth, my friend Garth, I see on here too.
Amen. Amen. Well, your team is amazing. Your facilities are amazing. I love what you've done with the landscaping out there, the mountains, the lake. I love what you've done with the place there. So, well done. Thank you, Peter, for taking time to be with us today, for being part of this interview. We appreciate you, and we're gonna be talking about what you said for a long time. So, thank you.
I really appreciate the privilege. Y'all take care.
Thanks,
Yes.
Peter.
Thank you, Peter, and thank you, Tim. Wow, there's so much that you said that is just so helpful, so encouraging, and we will get to talk about that together in our groups in just one moment. So thank you so much.